Hey everybody, today I've got another question and answer video for you, and this one's going to cover some garden planning, some very specific hydrangea questions, and then also just some comments that came in from some previous videos. Forgive my voice, it's a little rough, but I should be able to get through this. First question comes from Terry D, and Terry writes, do you keep a garden journal? And I wish I was somebody who kept a great detailed journal of all the things I'm doing, especially when it comes to like planting my seeds and things like that. What I do use though, and I've mentioned this in one video before, was like a phone on my app called Trello. And Trello is really nice because it basically creates these little folders on your phone. You can upload photos, you can write down notes. And so I'm very good at getting all my plant tags in there and any kind of information. And the good thing about those notes is that they're all going to be dated, so I can refer back to that. I take lots of photos, so I do have quite a few photos of my works in progress. And when it comes to things like all my seeds, I do have a really good like spreadsheet that I keep of all the seeds that I have and what their germination rates are and all that kind of stuff, so I can find it at a glance, because I get so tired of having to find that information later, especially if I lost a seed packet or something like that. So I like to have that all written out. For the nursery and greenhouse, I do keep a lot of spreadsheets of all the plants that we're getting, plants that we've had, you know, that kind of stuff. So I'm really good in that kind of environment. I think if I had a journal and I was in an environment where maybe like I had a special seed starting room, and every time I went in the room, I wrote in the journal, I'd be more apt to do that. Whereas when I'm doing my seed starting in the spring, I'm usually in the greenhouse, so I'm working all day and I'm kind of fitting it in between things, and I've got lots of things going on, so I'm a little too distracted. So I do use Trello. I would recommend trying it. It's actually quite nice for organizing different things, especially photos and like if you have a website address or things like that in there. Next question comes from Lisa Smith, and she asks, how do you plan your beds? I'd like to be more organized with my choices. And I'm going to be honest with you, I am not really good at landscape design. That's not my forte. It's always a little uncomfortable because people were like, oh, I should have you come in and design my flower beds or whatever. I'm pretty good with containers, but when it comes to the landscape, I labor over it. I'm not real quick with it. I'm not super effective. I don't have great experience in that. Most of the things that I plant in my yard are for testing purposes. So I want to find out how plants perform, how they do in certain places. So really, I'm only thinking about height. You know, I put the tall things in the back, short things in the front, and sun. You know, does it need the sun? Does it not need sun? So that's how I do it. I have started watching a YouTuber that I'm kind of enjoying. It's A Garden for Birds, and I really like her channel. She has a lot of good design suggestions in there, and she's not a landscape architect or a landscape designer either, but I think that her tips are really strong. Now, she does focus on natives, plants specifically for birds, but I think her design suggestions apply across the board. So it doesn't matter, you know, if you're looking specifically for natives, you can apply what she's talking about, you know, across all kinds of things. So I would say that's somebody to check out. There's a lot of other people on YouTube who are really good with design, and they give suggestions. The plant panel from Proven Winners Color Choice Shrubs, they do a nice job as well. So people send in their problem spots and then they make suggestions. I think they do a really nice job too of giving you different options to solve certain problems. So check that one out too. So those would be two channels, and if you have more, do go ahead and leave them in the comments, because I do like watching those kind of videos. I do want to kind of up my game a little bit, so I'm making some better choices and thinking about design a little bit more when I'm choosing my plants. So that's kind of important for me too. So good question. Next one comes from Auntie CL. I've been watching your hydrangea videos and taking notes, laugh out loud. I'm in search of a smaller 2 to 3 foot early blooming variety that is white and lime and turns to pink or ruby that isn't a lace cap. It's for the front of the house alongside a covered porch. It's one level, so I don't want them too tall or they'll block the view of the front of the house and the front door as you drive in the yard. The spot faces east, gets summer sun from about 4 a.m. to 5 p.m. or 5 a.m. to about 1 to 2 p.m., zone 2. I love the bobo, but I really want something that turns pink. And I have found that the bobo really, if it's going to turn color, it's going to be more like the traditional Limelight, so a little bit of that pinky mauvey color, but not a real strong pink like some of the newer varieties. So I understand where you're coming from there. I'm thinking Firelight Tidbit, but not sure if it's the earliest bloomer, or is there something like this variety but even earlier blooming? I'm overwhelmed by choices. P.S. I've got 2 little lime punch in that spot now and 3 flare, but I think they're going to get too tall, so I want to replace them, and I don't like how the flare looks. Okay, this is where I get to have some fun, because you know me, I like to have little charts and things like that. So basically, you've given me 4 criteria here. So you're saying you want an early bloomer, needs to have the pink color. You want really good pink color. You're not a big fan of the more lacier panicles, so you like a tighter panicle, and you need to stay pretty short. So that's 4. I can get you 3 of the 4 in the varieties that I'm familiar with. So let's go ahead and look at what those are, and you can kind of make your choice from there. So I've got 7 contenders for you to consider. First off, when we look at early bloomers, there's really 4 that I'm most familiar with as being really early bloomers. So the Quickfire Fab, definitely an earlier blooming, tighter panicle. The Spring Sizzle, the Tiny Quickfire, actually any of the Quickfires are earlier than the others, and early evolution. So we've got 4 that meet that early criteria. That said, the other 3 on this list aren't too bad. They definitely bloom earlier than, say, the traditional Limelight and the Little Lime. So you're going to find that these other ones are going to be in that mid-range. So I don't think these are going to be bad choices as well. The new Limelight Prime is a little bit earlier and brighter pink as well, but it gets quite large. So that might not work for you, or it won't work for you. Next up, we're going to talk about that pink color that you like. So you want that nice, probably bright pink color that a lot of those hydrangeas get. Remember, those colors are dependent on conditions. So if you don't have cold nights and if there's really drought conditions, you might not get those colors. You might just go from the kind of white color to more of a papery brown, paper bag brown color. And you're probably going to want, that's not going to be the pink that you're looking for, but in ideal conditions, they're fantastic. And then the other thing would be that tighter panicle. And it is true, the Flare has that really lacy, loose kind of panicle that we see in the Pinky Winky. We also see it in the Candelabra. Also the traditional Quickfires. So Quickfire, Little Quickfire, and Tiny Quickfire also have those kind of panicles. So those are the next 2 on that list as well. So Quickfire Fab meets that, Strawberry Sundae meets that, Spring Sizzle meets that. The Tiny Quickfire and the Early Evolution. Early Evolution is a really nice one, but it does have that more airy type of panicle. So, and that one's probably, it's like the perfect size for you, but the wrong type of flower. And then when we get into the Firelight Tidbit and the Little Lime Punch, those do have the tighter panicles. So those would meet your criteria there. So now we're going to look at size, because right now, we basically are saying the Tiny Quickfire and Early Evolution aren't going to work for you, but the others might still be a contender until we look for size. And the 3 that I have on top there, those are all going to be getting a little bit too big for you. So the Quickfire Fab, the Strawberry Sundae, the Spring Sizzle, not going to be cut out for that. When it comes to size, Tiny Quickfire, Early Evolution, fantastic. They are exactly what you need, in that space. But again, wrong flower panicle. And they also, I should mention, they don't get the same pinkness as well. They tend to get a darker color, more of a mauve type of color. So that's kind of important. The Firelight Tidbit, it doesn't get the hot pink color the same way that we see in some of the other varieties, but it is a pretty intense pink, darker kind of almost red raspberry color. So I think you're going to be okay with the color. It's not going to be that hot pink that you're going to see in the Little Lime Punch, but it's going to be pretty good. So it's still an option for you. So you are right. That Firelight Tidbit is probably your best bet. It's not the earliest blooming, but it's not way out there. It's not a real late bloomer. I do want you to think, though, your Little Lime Punch might not be out of the question, though, because you said you're in zone 3, so you're even colder than I am. I'm guessing your season is a lot shorter, or even shorter than mine, which means that your hydrangeas aren't going to necessarily get to the full size that they would in maybe a warmer climate or a climate that has a longer kind of growing period. So that Little Lime Punch might actually stay in the size that you're looking for, possibly. Now, it probably is going to get over 3 feet, but it might still be okay in that space. So you might want to just hang on to it for a little while. If you're totally committed to getting rid of them, the Firelight Tidbit's going to do really well in that spot. But I would consider them because I still think the color is fantastic on them. And they're going to look pretty good with the Firelight Tidbit as well. That Firelight Tidbit's going to be smaller, a little bit more kind of compact. It's going to have that darker color, whereas the Little Lime Punch is going to be, that one actually is a very full growing one as well. So you get a nice habit on it, but it gets that really nice color when the conditions are right, like really fantastic color, and it gets the color pretty early. So I think you're on the right track with the Firelight Tidbit. And again, I wouldn't rule out the Little Lime Punch. It's a beautiful hydrangea. I'd hate to see you, not have it someplace, but I'm sure you have someplace else for it. As for the Flare, you're right. If that's not the panicle flower panicle that you like, then it's not going to work for you. I'd recommend maybe giving it to a friend or something because it's still a nice looking hydrangea. We have another question from Sandra. She writes, quick question. I just got 4 quick fire fab panicle hydrangeas. I want to wait until spring to put them in the ground. Just wanted to know if I should put them in a grow bag for winter or leave them in their nursery pots. Okay. Part of it's going to depend on your zone. So if you're zone 5 or higher, they're going to be fine in that nursery pot. I've had them in zone 4 over the winter in a nursery pot, and they've been fine too. Those panicle hydrangeas tend to be quite hardy. Panicle and the arborescents tend to be able to handle colder winters with pretty good grace. They're able to get through it and show up, in the spring as if nothing had ever happened. The thing I would watch out for, though, you don't want those nursery pots to dry out. So you also don't want them super soggy, but you don't want them to dry out because that's going to cause a lot of stress on the plant. I also would say put them someplace where they're a little protected from the wind. You could put them in a place outside where you get a snowdrift and then the snow is going to cover them, and that's going to help protect that pot as well. I would probably also trim them back in the fall. Like once, I'm sure you've lost all your leaves on them, so I would trim them back to how you would normally prune them, and that way you don't have to worry about the pot getting knocked over in the wind as much, because if you have the bigger size with maybe some flower panicles still on there, the snow might weigh it down and knock it over. So you want to keep it upright so that way any snow melt's going to get into that pot. You can also put things around it, like if you have old, or new soil bags, you can put those around it, straw bales, pretty much anything that you can pack around there, leaves, anything like that. That's going to help insulate those pots a little bit. Again, it's going to really depend on the conditions. If you're going to keep them in a barn or a shed, be really careful in that situation, because sometimes our barns and sheds might get warmed up or might get too warm. Or like some people say, oh, I put it in my garage or in my breezeway, and they don't realize that it doesn't get very cold in that area, and actually it stays quite warm. You might start getting some growth, or you might not go as dormant. It likes that cold period. So keeping them outside should be fine. Even I've seen people just tuck them under their deck, for that winter. You just got to make sure you get them out right away, early in the season. Just bring out those pots so that they're out kind of in a sunny spot so they can start leafing out. As far as planting them, you can plant them whenever you want. So if you want to plant them early spring or later spring, it's going to be fine. You don't have to worry if they start leafing out. You could plant them after they leaf out. You can plant them before they leaf out. Won't make a difference. There's always risk by keeping them in the pots. They're always going to be happier in the ground, but are they going to be happier in a grow bag? If they're super root bound, then maybe I would put them into something a little bit larger. But if you take them out and it doesn't look like it's like swirling roots and really, like thick roots, if it's kind of more the thinner roots around the edge, I wouldn't worry about it too much. Should be okay. And if they've been holding water when you water them now, or when you're watering before they went dormant, should be just fine. So I wouldn't be too worried about it. So good luck. And Graham Jam asked, what brand are your knee pads? I need a good pair. The pair that I was wearing in the video in Ireland were from Duluth Trading. I'll be honest, they are like the bionic pair. They're like more knee pad than I actually need. They work pretty well. They're super durable. I have had no wear and tear on them at all, and I use them on gravel. I use them all over the place. So they're very good quality. They're very durable, but they are the kind of double strap, so there's a high strap kind of on the thigh and then kind of goes around the back of the knee. Good thing about that is that it's not doing anything that's going to cut off any circulation behind your knees, so that can be a good thing about those, but they're probably more knee pad than the average person needs. They're more than I need, but I like them, so I would recommend them. Nicole writes, love your videos. Can I ask, why don't you whippersnip, weed eat, the grass low and go over it with a weed killer, even a natural type like vinegar, salt, soap, solution. If you don't like the idea of a harsher one, it could reduce them a lot after repeating a couple times. She's from Australia. Okay, so first thing is, I have used that in Ireland and it has kind of kept them at bay. They tend to come right back for me, especially in Ireland. Remember, Ireland's very wet. Things like grasses and some of the other weeds do grow much faster there than I'm used to, even in Michigan, where we still have a good amount of moisture, but nothing compared to the growth I see in Ireland. So that's a little bit of a something that kind of comes into play. I'm trying to use less and less chemicals because the more I read about it, there's just that risk of those chemicals getting into our water supply, getting into our crops and all that kind of stuff. And so even though some studies will say certain things are safe, they're not. They keep finding new stuff that are problematic. So if I can avoid them, I will. I have tried the vinegar and the soap and salt thing, and I had mixed results. It was kind of it worked for a while, but they did all come back. It didn't actually kill them. It just kind of killed them at the surface, which is fine because if you keep at it, it will knock them out. Remember, even the natural weed killers are still chemicals that you're adding. So you are adding, vinegar and acid to your soil. So keep that in mind. Vinegar is an acid, right? Or is that a base? I forget my science. Doesn't matter. It's changing the pH, or it could change the pH. It's not a super serious thing. You're not spraying so much that you're going to find a big number change in your pH. But over time, if you're using a lot of it, you definitely could see a change in your pH. And I did post a little reel of the snow that we got this week here in the Upper Peninsula. We got quite a bit, actually. I'm actually back in Michigan. We still have some more Ireland videos put out there, but we are back home, and there is snow on the ground. We got probably close to a foot of snow. It's going to melt later on in the week, so that's good. And so Stephanie wrote, does this surprise you? Is it the first snowfall this year? Back in the mid-70s, I was stationed at K.I. Sawyer Air Force Base, which is nearby. I think I flew into Marquette. I think it was early in mid-October. Anyway, I remember flying in and seeing all this white stuff on the ground, and I asked where all the sand came from. That's what it looked like from the plane. They all busted out laughing. They said, "Son, that's not sand, that's snow." I had just left Florida. So no, I'm actually not surprised. We've already had some snow here. We saw it on the camera a couple weeks ago. We can get snow in late September even. And definitely we didn't have a lot. We didn't have any accumulation in October and even into November. So this is actually right on time. It's just that anytime the snow arrives, we just kind of dread it and we make a big deal out of it. And then we say, okay, winter's here, and we deal with it. But we do get a lot of snow up here. So a lot more than maybe other parts of even Michigan or even the Midwest. So winter's here, snow is here. That's our life right now. At least that's where it is. Like I said, the better weather's coming though, so it's going to warm up. We're going to have fluctuation here, so we'll have some nice days left too, so I can still get some work done outside. All my hydrangeas are completely buried in snow right now, so hopefully the melt comes on and I can get them trimmed. I like to trim them in the fall. I know a lot of people trim them in the spring, but I do more fall, so hopefully I can get a video of that for you. So in my previous Q&A, there was a comment about, I guess, American style fertilizing and American gardening versus Irish or European gardening. And I had addressed a couple things in there, kind of talking about what that was. And the Main Street Garden wrote, "Woofda, that was a harsh comment. Thank you for your patience. Sometimes the internet can be rude. As always, I enjoy and look forward to your videos." I'll be honest, when I read that comment, I didn't necessarily think they were being harsh or particularly rude. I think they were actually being supportive. I mean, based when I read it with that kind of those glasses on, I see it as a very supportive comment, but I think it revealed maybe some shortcomings or some biases that maybe this person has, or maybe some misinformation that this person had gotten. So, they were kind of I guess, being a little negative towards some of the American style gardening that they've seen. And that ties right into this next comment, because I had mentioned that I think YouTube might be contributing to that, because a lot of people from outside of the US, the only view that they get of maybe US gardening is from some of the big YouTube channels. And maybe there's some information in there and some things that maybe aren't representative of everybody. Same thing with US marketing of some of the products that are out there. So watch that video if you kind of want to know more about what I'm talking about. I will read this next comment from Deja Tea. It says, "I do think it's a YouTube thing. The idea that Americans are all about fertilizers, and some are indeed trying to sell you the fertilizers that sponsor them or that they wish did. Of course, there are plenty of American YouTube gardeners that follow different practices, and even more gardeners in general in America that do, but I can see how some of the more popular channels portray a different picture. One hopes most people realize those gardens are not necessarily representative of the average garden. Unfortunately, the average American garden is seldom a garden at all, but I recognize it's hard when the same plants and products start popping up in all the channels, and those YouTubers are inadvertently or not, let's say, influencing one another. And that's something I've talked about before, where there is kind of this trend where when something's popular on YouTube, a lot of other people start doing it. And it's not just in gardening, it's in every facet of the internet. And a lot of smaller channels do aspire to have some of the relationships that some of the bigger channels have with brands and that type of thing. And so sometimes I think that maybe mimicry or maybe just including some of the same products that those bigger YouTubes do help those people. Well, partly, I think sometimes those are good suggestions and they're following the advice of these other YouTubers and having success. So I'm not going to criticize that. There was the comment too, I've heard this a lot, where people are saying, well, some of those gardens are a little unrealistic. And so sometimes people complain about that, or they complain that, oh, I used to follow that YouTuber, but then now they're all sponsored and they have this big garden and they're too, I can't relate to them anymore. Hey, every gardener goes through a journey. And I think, you're watching some of these journeys on YouTube, and I know what you mean. I followed some YouTubers in different genres as well who, their channel has changed as they've changed, and I respect that change, but I do know what you mean. Like sometimes you're like, oh gosh, I used to, everything that they put out, I could relate to. And now maybe 50% of it. Doesn't mean those channels aren't worth watching, but maybe you don't relate to them the same way. That's why I recommend you keep following some of the newer channels, or channels that do it or do have what you like. Leave comments, like their videos, do all that, because that's going to help those channels get more of an audience and help them find their audience. So by you telling YouTube, I like it, I'm going to comment, I'm going to interact, I'm going to share it. I think that is the best way for you to really promote some of the channels that you do absolutely love. And the comment continues, definitely worth a read. I'll kind of stop here because I think I've gotten to kind of that point in the video where we can kind of wrap this up. I do have a lot of comments coming in for that video I did on fake AI plants. I was going to include those in here, and then I realized, no, that's going to be its own video because you guys have a lot of opinions on the AI plants. So if you haven't watched and commented on that video, please do, because there will be another video where I talk specifically about the comments that you guys are making and questions that you guys have. So thank you guys for watching, and I'm so glad my voice held up right till the end. Hopefully I don't lose it. And we'll see you guys all very, very soon.